thank you so much for coming today. I'm just really thrilled to have such a great turnout at our wonderful first legislative breakfast. Before we get started today, I'd like to thank Jerry Getz and her team for such a great breakfast. Thank you, Jerry. Also, before we get started, I would like to do a special thank you to Jess Livesey, who is at our final board event here today. Jess, please stand up and let everybody give you a hand. We're going to have a special open house for Jess on the 20th of May. Is that May or June? June. And it'll be here at the board from 4 to 6. It's free, open to all of you, so please come here and wish Jess very well on his next chapter in his life. We look forward to seeing you all then. It's a very busy time of the year, so we're glad that we could attract such a large gathering this morning to hear about state and national legislative issues. We have Paul Glass, the Ohio Association's Director of Political Affairs, and Scott Williams, OAR Director of Government Affairs, here today to share the latest on statewide issues. Welcome, Paul and Scott. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. We love getting out of Columbus. And can you guys hear me? Yeah. Loving getting out of Columbus and coming to speak to local boards. I'm just going to talk briefly kind of about what Scott and I do on a daily basis and what we do for you at OAR and the State House. And Scott's going to come up and talk about the issue that maybe you're all familiar with that deals with the expansion of the sales tax base to include real estate-related services and almost every service in Ohio. I've had a sinus infection, and I have both my ears are clogged, so I can't hear very well, so I'm going to that's why Scott's going to do most of the talking. It works at home great when I have a wife and 4 children, because I could ignore them, but when I come out to places like this, it makes it difficult for me to do my job. Basically, Scott and I are your lobbyists in Columbus. We're the folks who lobby on your behalf to the Ohio General Assembly, the 99 members of the Ohio House, the 33 members of the Ohio Senate, as well as the governor's office, and specifically the Ohio Department of Commerce and the Ohio Division of Real Estate and Professional Licensing, the regulators of all of you. We deal with the issues that are important to you as realtors, but more importantly, we deal with issues that are important to homeowners, because if we don't protect private property rights and home ownership in Ohio, then it's very difficult for all of you to do your job to transfer real estate, whether it's residential or commercial. We deal with a myriad of issues, not just budgetary issues. There are obviously tax issues we deal with, environmental issues. It could be meth, amphetamine houses, and the ability to clean those up and ensure that they are transferred. We deal with wetlands. We deal with appraisal management companies, auctions, appraisal issues. You name it, we deal with it. Anything that would adversely affect you as a business person or would adversely affect the transfer of private property are the issues that Scott and I deal with on a daily basis. Traditionally, what we do is, most people think the life of a lobbyist is very exciting, but all we really do is sit through a bunch of meetings and listen to people testify on a daily basis and meet with your members of the General Assembly. It's really not that exciting. They're called lobbyists for a reason, because you're basically sitting in the lobby all day long and hoping to find someone that you can talk to about an issue that's important to you or important to us. We also deal with RPAC, which is a passion of mine. As one of the functions that I deal with on a daily basis is to help local boards raise RPAC dollars to support not only candidates at the local level, but obviously candidates at the state and national level. We are the shining star, at least statewide. I know nationally we are as well, but if you look at how we operate as a PAC in Ohio, Scott and I get asked to speak to numerous business and trade associations across the state to kind of inform them how we operate and why our RPAC is so successful, why our PAC is so large, why we have such a big success rate as far as state and local elections and national elections. But and it's basically every time we go out and talk to those folks, we tell them it's because of you and how you operate, and we don't stand in your way. And what we try to do is just give you the tools to allow you the local boards or your membership to raise RPAC dollars. And the fact that we try to give you, the local board, your dollars back to spend as you see fit on any candidate that you see fit without the interference of us at the state level, we feel is probably one of the main benefits of why RPAC is such a great program in Ohio, and one that is trying to be emulated not only nationally but again throughout the state of Ohio through business groups and trade associations. The more you raise, the more you keep. If you want to spend it all on the local dog catcher, we don't care. That's your prerogative. You've raised the money, and at the local level, turn this off. At the local level, that's the way it should be, because today's dog catcher will probably be tomorrow's state rep and the state senator and probably congressman or congresswoman in the near future. And as you all know, most of those folks that get in D.C. sometimes act like they were the former dog catcher. So the fact that you've had relationships with them, it enables Scott and I to do our jobs much easier at the State House. Anytime we walk into a meeting with somebody and the first thing they said is, "Oh, we already talked to Georgianne and I about that issue. She gave me an earful the other day when we were at Dorothy Lane Market." And it makes Scott and I's job tremendously easier. We can go on to the next issue right away because they already know what the impact's going to be, whether it's to real estate or home ownership. So I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for your support of RPAC. Your board has done a wonderful job, not only raising RPAC dollars in the aggregate, but also the way you distribute at the local level and support your candidates. Your board is very well respected at the State House among your state legislators. They speak very highly of you anytime they call us. Without further ado, I'm going to have Scott come up and kind of talk about the sales tax issue and any other issues you guys have concerns about, and then we'll both be happy to answer any questions you have on any issues, whether it's OAR, RPAC, or obviously any legislative issue that comes before us.
You guys have all seen the 60-minute things where they find a guy who's on permanent total disability and they show pictures of him out water skiing and stuff. He's been milking his sinus infection for the last month. He is perfectly fine when we're in the car together. I'm losing my voice over this. I'm not gonna go through the whole sales tax piece, because I think we've all read about it, know about it. But just to help frame the conversation, you know. Governor came out with his new budget proposal earlier in January, actually beginning of February, House Bill 59, and in it he had a series of changes, ranging from being a new governor, what all governors do. He's changing the school funding formula for funding our schools, expansion of the Medicaid program to include the money that the federal government has out there for what's known as Obamacare or Obamacare, moving on to a severance tax on the oil and gas industry for those natural resources they extract from our state, a large income tax cut for small businesses, a significant income tax for personal income taxpayers, and then also an expansion of the sales tax on the service industry. If you saw the Dispatch this week, they had a pretty good cartoon, and Mr. Kasich has been quoted quite a few times about getting on the bus or getting ran over. It was a picture of a bus on a railroad track, and you can hear them turning the ignition on it, and there's a large train barreling down about to wipe this bus out, and the train is called the Ohio House of Representatives. Because out of those 5 pieces that he has asked for, right now the House has decided he's getting none of them. He is technically getting the name of his school funding proposal, but it is actually Bob Taft's plan. We're going back to the building blocks, but they've kept his name. Now, I can't stress enough, what this doesn't mean is that the sales tax expansion is dead. If you recall, the sales tax would apply to all services out there, and the most troubling part of that was business to business. Obviously, it would apply to your commissions when you sold a home. When that broker received that commission check, there would be sales tax applied to that. When that broker split to the cooperating broker, there would be sales tax applied to that. And when those splits were made to the agent, there would also be sales tax applied to those transactions. While that is troubling in and of itself, it also works the other way. For all those fees that you may pay inside of a brokerage, if you pay a desk fee, a sitting fee, an advertising fee, trash disposal fee, any of those fees would also be deemed a service you are purchasing from that broker, and you would be charged sales tax on that. At the same time, if the broker, and we'll use RE/MAX as an example, pays a fee to RE/MAX International for advertising, or for trademark rights, or for franchise fees, those would be subject to sales tax. Essentially what the governor did was took the old sales and use tax model where you tax goods and exempt specific goods. Dayton's manufacturing heavy area will use the example of a lump of steel. Under the sales tax code as it is written today, if you buy a chunk of steel for turning it into a fender to sell to Ford to put on a truck, you don't pay sales tax on that chunk of steel. Ford doesn't pay sales tax when they purchase that fender from you. But when you buy that Ford Explorer, you pay the sales tax on the end use. By writing the sales tax code the way he did, or essentially not writing the code, it applies to all business-to-business transactions. That's why your internal costs would also be captured. You take a company like Procter & Gamble, who has sub-corporations, wholly owned subsidiaries, maybe that does their accounting work. When they purchase that accounting service, essentially purchase it from that subsidiary, they would be paying sales tax on that. P&G put their costs at about $150 million. Chase Bank is another good example. ATM fees would be applied to this. When you went to the bank, if you weren't a customer, $5 to hit the ATM, there'd be sales tax applied to that. Chase thought it was $150 million just to rekey their ATM machines. Something they wouldn't even be able to accomplish within 6 months. Or within the 6 months time period, they wouldn't be able to accomplish it within 3 years. So when this all rolled out, what we did was we went out and no one came out and opposed it immediately. Everyone wanted to make sure that they had numbers and facts and their ducks in a row, because the one thing that everyone has criticized the administration is they haven't. No one from the administration has been able to provide us numbers. So we went out, hired a research firm, Tom Zana, who's a former tax commissioner, actually the former tax commissioner under Taft, who tried to do the sales tax last time, to help us understand the impact on our membership. And one of the things that I think you were provided today is a packet of information that includes Mr. Fletcher's testimony to the Ways and Means Committee, and then 2 different breakouts. And we went about it from 2 ways because, I think we all know that at the end of the day, a lot of the sales tax will be eaten by you. That when you sit down with the client and talk about the costs and the fees, they're going to negotiate that out. Somewhere this is going to come out of your pocket. But the administration has said, this is a consumer-based tax, so it's all going to be passed on. So the first piece, and then we run a consumer piece. So from the first time that client comes in and applies for a loan at the bank, sales tax on that. When the appraisal is done, the sales tax on the appraisal. When the home inspector, all the sort of things that you have on a general statement that would now be subject to sales tax. And on a benchmark $125,000 home in Ohio, it's about $633 additional dollars out of a buyer's pocket. You cannot finance sales tax in the state of Ohio, so these are hard dollars that they would have to pay. The second part of it is we run individual scenarios. We had a series of interviews with about 15 different brokers and agents around the state, ranging from really big commercial guys to really small single agents in rural parts of the state, because we wanted to make sure the income tax cut was, we knew it's a benefit, it's an income tax cut, but to make sure that we were right and that we thought the sales tax impact would be worse for that. And what we found was our average member is going to save about $400 a year on the income tax cut. Just within the real estate related services, that same agent is going to have about a $1,900 exposure under the sales tax. So clearly this is, it's a $1,500 loser. So at that point we went back to Legislative Steering Committee, went back to your Executive Committee, and we were the third group by about 2 hours out of the gate to oppose it. The bar was first. The CPAs came out. We were about 2 hours behind the CPAs in opposing it. What we've been doing since then is we go out, we've testified in committee, we hand this out every time we talk to members. Paul and I have talked to every member of the finance, every member of House leadership, and all the Ways and Means committees. Now, what you saw in the paper this week was, Governor's tax plan dead. That is a hopeful estimation of what it is. Paul and I were called in the other day with a couple other groups to talk to the Speaker and the Chairman of the Finance Committee, and it is far from dead. It is out of the budget now simply because the House wants to pass the budget. Oh, I thought that was my phone booth. The House wants to pass the budget by April 18th. There is no way they can fix this sales tax proposal by April 18th and move the budget along. What we were told very explicitly was the House and the Senate agrees with the governor's theory that Ohio has an income tax problem. This is all being driven by a group of Republican governors who believe that the income tax is the largest killer of jobs and economic growth. They absolutely 100% believe that is the case. And we were told very specifically that They're going to work with interested parties. They're going to continue to meet, and their goal is a conference committee to have a package much more similar to what the governor proposed. What they put in this was a flat 7% income tax cut. They took out the complete small business tax cut, the 50% of taxes for those S-corps and pass-throughs up to $750,000. That's out. The 20% cut in your personal income tax rate, that cut is out. They put in a flat 7% retroactive to January of this year across all income tax levels. They do not think that is enough. They absolutely want to get closer to, and the chairman's phrase was the range, as he said it, of the governor's proposal, 20% and a 50% cut on small business. You can't do that without replacing that revenue somewhere. So, for the next 3 months, we're going to continue to have this discussion about ways to do it. One of the reasons we've hired Mr. Zano as well is because we actually, we kind of knew we'd get to this point where, and I say this a lot, we're searching for a solution for something we never asked for. I mean, we never went into the governor and said, you need to cut taxes. Chamber never went in and said, you got to cut taxes. But now we're expected to figure out a way to tax ourselves in a different manner so that he can provide an income tax cut to other people. So from now until the end of June, this is what we're going to be working on. One of the things that Tom will help us with is getting that proposal. And there are a series of ways that you can do it, from messing with the CAT tax to ultimately, and this is the phrase that you'll hear all the time. The Senate President was quoted in the paper yesterday after session that moving us from an income tax-based system to a consumption tax-based system. Now, frankly, I don't understand the difference, and no one has been really able to tell me what a consumption tax is. To me, that is this sales tax. You're taxing a consumer. But they believe that if they call it a consumption tax and move out those business-to-business tax costs, when I talked about the P&G example or the Chase example, if you move those tax examples out and make it ultimately a consumer tax, that's something they think they can live with. Now, the danger is, of course, that means your commissions are still in it. And you still get back to that point. At some point, you're going to sit down at a client's house and negotiate a deal, and you're going to say, my commission is 5%, there's going to be these fees, and there's going to be sales tax applied, and you'll end up with this out of pocket. And they're going to say, no, your commission is going to be X minus that 0.63%, and then I'm going to end up with this out of pocket so I can buy that next house. And we're working with an economist right now to kind of show that. The struggle in being one of the states that is out front on this and most forward on this is the lack of data. Harvard has some data we're trying to get. The Bureau of Economic Advisors has some data we're trying to get. I mean, tax commissioner will tell you almost nothing, and we're trying to fight their lack of numbers, and we're trying to put hard numbers out there. And everyone we take what we have so far to thanks us tremendously that we have shown them the actual impact. So to get to that next step is our next challenge, to show the depression on income on this, that moving this from one side to the other is absolutely a depression of income. I guess, are there questions on the sales tax proposal or where we're at on it? I mean, I talk a lot about how it impacts, but I like to answer questions on the sales tax as I go along. Yes, ma'am.
Are you saying that you don't think the fair tax would work, or you don't really understand that?
The fair tax, I'm not. Here, I had this conversation with someone from Columbus the other day. I don't think it's a bad idea at all. And one of the issues that we were working on at the Realtor Association also is the problem that Ohio faces is municipal tax. I mean, if the state went to a zero income tax rate, they went to zero, you still got 2.5 in Columbus. And if you happen to live in Arlington, you got 1%. You're still, we could never, because we have let 635 municipalities in the state levy an income tax. No matter what we did, we could never get to zero. We've let that horse out of the barn. So I'd say that's a bad idea. But you have to do that, I think, in some conjunction with reining back on the municipal tax. That's one of the things, House Bill 5, that we're working on as well, some sort of uniformity. There is not a software company in the country, no TurboTax, no professional stuff that your CPAs work with, that will write municipal software for the state of Ohio, because they won't accept the liability that no one uses the same Form 37, no one defines income the same way, no one defines residency, no one has the same deductions, and it is just an administrative nightmare. So I think that's a possibility, but at the same time, you always have to have hanging over you that goofy municipal income tax system.
Well, the cities are going to get theirs municipality.
And you,
I think on a federal and or state basis, the fair tax will work. If you buy it, you pay tax.
and I think one of the things you're seeing the move to, and they actually included language in the budget proposal, is the whole internet tax issue, the issue of nexus. When you purchase a good on the internet, whether or not you have to pay sales tax on that. There was a lot of talk in Congress this week in the paper that they were looking at some sort of e-fairness legislation. For years, Amazon and other companies were against this. Amazon is actually going out and negotiating with 15 states the payment of sales tax or collection of sales tax for goods sold into those states. And Ohio put language in there. It's still, there's a 1992 court decision, I think, that says you can't do it, but they're getting closer. New Jersey, and I think this was great of their governor, New Jersey went out and negotiated with Amazon to build 2 distribution facilities in the state of New Jersey. And they forego sales tax, I think, for 5 years. They won't collect New Jersey sales tax for 5 years. But it brought in something like, 5,000 or 6,000 jobs, 2 giant headquarters. So they get all that income tax, all that job growth. Yeah, they give up on the sales tax for a few years. But Amazon has kind of realized it's going to happen anyhow. That is a possibility, but there are no revenue estimates built in for the sales tax on internet sales right now because even though we define Nexus better in this budget and we'll start down that path, we won't collect that money, at least not at the beginning. Yes, sir.
I'd like a little bit of a clarification on something I probably misunderstood earlier. Let's assume that as a broker, I'm in a real estate transaction, and we'll assume for a moment that I'm representing a buyer. So the listing real estate broker is going to pay me X dollars, let's say $500 on commission. Therefore, am I liable for sales tax on that $500 that the other broker paid me?
Yes. And we went through this with the CAT. I'm sorry.
And then if I pay an agent their share of that commission, is that agent liable for income tax?
Yes.
Because that's an independent service.
We went through this, the CAT tax has been out for 5 or 6 years now, that there is a fundamental misunderstanding at the state of how we operate. And at the CAT tax, the biggest fight we had, and we worked for this for longer than it should have taken, the exact same problem, that the CAT tax would apply to the gross commission paid to the listing broker, it would have paid to the split to the cooperating broker, and then it would apply to the agents also. And it took us a long time, longer than it should have, to get the code to read that the CAT is only applied to those dollars that are retained as an individual. Once all the splits are done, that's when you start to count the CAT. And that's, as we go through this, we have a series of, goal 1 is just to kill this thing, to make it stop, make it go away. Goal 2, that's got to be goal 2. Absolutely, you cannot have this thing. And the phrase the tax practitioners use is pyramiding, that you are taxing the same dollar multiple times within a transaction. Pyramiding is the word that you'll hear and read, and that's exactly what it does to our commissions. It pyramids that tax along every step of the transaction. And there's a group out there. It's the Council on State Taxation. Fred Knightley, the guy that used to be the deputy tax commissioner here in Ohio, runs it. It's based out of D.C. Their memberships are only Fortune 100 companies, and they pay them to do research on tax policy in states to help them cite their businesses. They came out last week and had done a study based upon, because right now it's us, Louisiana, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Minnesota that have a proposal like this out there. And they went out and looked at these 5 proposals and just how bad it is. And one of the facts they point to is that pyramiding. That when you do a service tax in this manner, 80% of it is paid by business within business. This isn't a consumer tax. That 80% of the service tax, as these states have written it, is paid by business. And they basically said this is a closed-door tax policy for states. There is no business that would want to come to these states with this type of tax policy. It was pretty harsh. This gentleman right here, and then, yeah.
You said earlier, a lot of times, say we're at a reasonable point, and, seller says, hey, I'm not paying this tax, you want to reduce your commission to come here. If this passes, I hope it doesn't, it's illegal for, let's say, some broker to, start marketing on, hey, use us, we're going to pay the taxes. To try to get one up on the other.
Technically, it would not be legal for them to do that. Now, and this is why. Ohio law says the sales tax is a consumer-paid tax, and it must be broken out on the bill. Now, we've all seen it, though. I mean, will it happen? Will it be known that this brokerage will eat that sales tax, or this brokerage will do There's a provision in there as well that 88 counties plus 8 transit authorities apply a local sales tax rate. So the county tax will apply also, but it is limited the first 3 years to 10% of gross. So if Montgomery County brings in $100 countywide in sales tax, the next year they'll only be able to bring in $110 for 3 years. Statewide average is 0.63. So will there be a broker out there that says, you know what, we don't do 5%. Oh, I shouldn't have done it. We do 4.37. Yeah, that'll happen. And that's where we show on the other sheet that depression of income. They wouldn't legally be able to advertise that just because of the way the sales tax is. And, that brings up a good point, too. Under this proposal, you would all have to get vendor's license. I mean, you will all be sales tax collectors and remitters because any of you guys have a part-time employee, a 1099 employee that maybe helps with your signs or clerical work or staffs some open houses, and you have to pay sales tax on their services. So you're going to be a vendor. You're going to remit and collect sales tax, and sales tax is done differently based upon volume. Some of you guys might be monthly remitters, some of you might be quarterly, some of you might be every 6 months, but you will be sales tax remitters. The governor's proposal anticipated that come September 1, all these new businesses, all these new service industries would be remitters of sales tax. That there would be, what they estimated at, and I think this was wrong, 200,000 new vendors in the state. Tax commissioner came in later and said, we think we might run out of numbers. We think we might have underestimated that. And they're not, not a joke. We're 26,000 members. CPAs are 35,000 members. The engineers are about another 20. I can get to 200,000 people who don't collect sales tax now on my fingers. It's not 200,000 new remitters. It's probably 500,000 new remitters. And I just don't know how they get that up and running. Now, I'll jump around, but let me go back. The other issue on sales tax for our commercial guys in here is sales tax is due when it's invoiced. It's not due when the bill is paid. And in the service industry, that becomes more difficult because if you invoice, if you're a CPA or a commercial guy, and you invoice for a commission, you have to remit the sales tax when that invoice goes out the door, not when you get that check back in. So I don't know how much this happens on our guys, so I'll use the CPA's examples that your CPA sends you a bill for a project. Well, use an architect. You guys use architects. The guy comes out to check structurally, and he sends you a bill for $10,000, and you call him back and say, Paul, that's too much. I'm paying you $7,500. Well, maybe a month goes by, a month and a half, and you go back and forth, and you settle on $8,250. Well, that architect has already remitted sales tax on that $10,000 purchase of service. He then has to go and file for a debt uncollected with the state. Wait till the state processes that debt uncollected and remit him the balance back. We believe OAR, because specifically, trademarks are subject to the sales tax. The use of a trademark or patent right is subject to the sales tax. There is a portion of our membership dues that pays for the right for you guys to call yourselves realtors. It's a trademark term. Now, while membership dues are not subject to the tax, if you're specifically taxing trademark use, I don't know how they won't apply it at least to a portion of our membership dues. So here we go. We send out dues billing in March. OAR is going to be on the hook for that sales tax. You might decide at the end of April you don't want to be a realtor anymore. That you're closing your business, you're moving on. We got to go through the same process of filing a debt uncollected. So, all right, there was another. This gentleman right. You're right here.
This may be a silly question, but I'm confused on when you're saying sales tax. If I receive a commission of $1,000 and as the broker, and then I pay it to my agent, and they get $600, I take sales tax out of that. Do they then receive a W-2 from me, or do they then have to pay income tax on that money as a independent contractor?
They would not receive a W-2, but 1099 employees, 1099 checks like you talked about, would still be subject. I mean, that's their reportable income. But sales tax would be applied to that amount. So if it's $600, 0.63% would be either redacted or they would owe that on that end of the bill. So redacting it would be the easiest instead of trading money back and forth. But yeah, it would be depressed by that amount.
But the income taxable amount is still $600.
Yes.
So they get taxed twice.
Yes. We would be the only state in the country. There are 3 states that have a similar tax policy. Hawaii, which is an island, so they don't have any competition issues. South Dakota, which really doesn't have a border situation, which is very similar. And then we always say New Mexico, but New Mexico is truly a gross receipts tax. It's kind of the same, but it's not really. But if we did this, we would be the only state in the country that had a sales, an income, and a gross receipts tax. No other state in the country levels those 3 taxes. And I've already said we have more municipal income taxing jurisdictions than anyone else in the country. The closest competitor to us is Pennsylvania. They have 63. We have 600 and some. Yes, sir.
I well list a property for $200,000. You put in my listing and a commission of 6%. Is that an invoice?
I'm sorry. You list the property. And then you put your... No, I mean, in that case, it's not because... I mean, it's due at the closing table, but not at the listing.
Well, but the invoice, you said the tax is due at the invoice issuance, not at the payment date.
Right.
If I have a listing contract that says 6% commission is due when the sale of...
Only if it's up.
Yeah, I would assume because it's a good question. You know, and that's. You know how many times we've sat in committee and someone's asked the tax commissioner a question like that, and I've said, "Well, answer it." I mean, it took forever because again, I said he specifically exempts 5 things: educational, golf and dance lessons, medical, prescription drugs, medical devices, and golf and dance lessons. Seriously, your casket when you die. Some consumer insurance product, and that basically talks about the premium itself. So if you're using an independent agent who gets a commission, that would be subject to the sales tax. Your title fee or your title policy, the policy amount, the premium would not be, but that fee to the agent would be. And then the final one is residential rents. So if you apply some construction. So if you apply if I don't exempt it, it's taxed. You have to assume the commercial rents are taxed. I mean, everyone has agreed now, but it took weeks to get him to say that commercial rents are taxed. I mean, their answer to all these sort of questions have been, well, we don't know. We'd figure that out in an audit. I'm not kidding. You think you can't make this stuff up? It's. And that's exactly why the governor has proposed the largest small business tax cut in this state's history has not had one single business group come out and endorse the plan. When the Ohio Chamber of Commerce broke with a 115-year tradition and endorsed a first-time governor, first time ever they've endorsed a governor, and came out and opposed his tax plan, that tells you. Yes, ma'am.
Is this like Nancy Pelosi says, sign the bill and you find out what you get?
Joe Tester right now kind of has that reputation.
So if the commercial rents are taxed, give me an illustration of how that, let's say that a commercial tenant's paying $1,000 rent. Tell me how that would go. Who would pay that and explain that?
In theory, it would be the tenant. It would be $1,000 plus the Montgomery County tax, and then you would turn that tax over. Remit that tax. Correct. Now, I'll be honest with you. I do commercial leases, but sometimes I struggle with them. Can you do that? Can you change the term of that lease right now and say, oh, by the way, we've been paying $1,000. You're in a 10-year deal. It's $1,000. Now I got to charge you $1,000 plus 0.63. See, our commercial guys say that some of the leases, some ways are written they can, some of the ways are written they can't. And you get into Ohio being a border state. If I'm in Toledo or Youngstown and I'm renting warehouse space and it doesn't really matter where I'm at, I can move across the state line. And every business in Ohio's cost of doing business goes up by 0.63%. So they'll use an example, and the tax commissioner will fight you on this, but it's true. You got a law firm in downtown Cincinnati. They moved their offices to Covington, Kentucky. Now, while they would not be required to collect the sales tax from their clients, now the clients would still be required to file it on their income tax. They'd still be on that line 18 where you're supposed to do your out-of-state purchase. They would still be required to do that. But that law firm, by being in Covington, Kentucky, will no longer have to pay sales tax on any accountant they hire, any temporary employees in their offices, on the rent of their building. I mean, their cost of doing business will go down from Ohio's cost by 0.63% by moving across the river. You talk about the shale area on the eastern part of the state where there's industrial buildings and warehouses going up constantly. Move those things to Pennsylvania. It's only I don't see any way, and I think again because the chambers, the engineers, the architects, all your big businesses in the state have come out against it, that this makes us better.
Yeah, I think this without saying that we're all against it. So, with that said, is our association, does it have any proactive recommendations for the governor and the state house in terms of how do we help our states?
We are working closely with the House to help them come up with a different means of doing the income tax cut. We have not, and it's not just us. I mean, no one has been invited by the administration to sit down and talk about this. I mean, the House was handed this the same day we were. And frankly, in a little bit of gamesmanship, when Paul and I were with the Speaker and the Finance Committee, there was us, the CPAs, like 5 or 6 groups. They brought the governor's office in for the first time, and they were told what the budget was going to look like the same day I was told what the budget. So there's a little bit of, and again, that's the reason we haven't done a call to action yet. The legislature has been very good in working with us. And again, this isn't, your rep or your senator's plan. This is the governor's plan. And the Speaker was quoted in the Plain Dealer a couple of weeks ago. It was on a different issue, but he kind of snapped at the reporter that he's tired of his members getting kicked in the head for something they didn't do. So that's why we've not asked you in bulk to start kicking, because they're working with us, and we don't want to sour that relationship. Now, if you see your guy on the street, absolutely tell him this is a bad idea. You run into him at a Rotary event, you run into him at tell him it's bad. Bill Beagle, you're a commercial guy, you have commercial properties. This is bad.
But getting back to my question, is there an opportunity, maybe a silver lining opportunity for an association like ours to be proactive, not to just say, hey, we're against this. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer that, it's not just realtors, but it's accountants, it's attorneys. This ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
But the question is there an opportunity for an association to then, hey, how can we be proactive in helping our state?
I think and here's the challenge. Like for us, and I'll just give you an off the cuff. One of our easy solutions would be you change the CAT tax. Very few of you pay the CAT tax. It is such a super low rate. And you could tinker with it, and as long as you kept the current exemptions in, we would be fine, and then we would get that benefit of the income tax cut. Now, when we start talking about tinkering with the CAT, we're going against the chamber. You know what I mean? So we are working, and trust me, the greatest thing ever about having Tom Zano as on our side. Yesterday morning, and we tried to talk to him twice a day, we can't reach him. He was invited in by the chairman of the Finance Committee to talk about solutions. I mean, he's a former tax commissioner. There are 3 people I can guarantee you who don't get taxed under anything Tom Zano says. General Motors, General Electric, and the Ohio Association of Realtors, because we're on his client list. So, I mean, those conversations are absolutely happening. But you understand the challenge is, it's who can you shift it to. And if you remember, we went through sales tax on services last time, and there probably will be an expansion of sales tax to services. It'll be those people who don't have, sadly, representation. I mean, we know you taxed dry cleaners last time because dry cleaners don't have, a strong association. There will probably be some limited expansion of the sales tax, and it will be those groups that weren't there. But absolutely, we're looking at every opportunity to I mean, and this is something we'd have to take up in association. If you could make this a pure consumer tax, I don't know, but I don't know how you make it a pure consumer tax either. So,
The hard part is Florida and Texas have never had an income tax. No state that's ever had an income tax, with the exception of Alaska, and they have oil, has ever repealed an income tax. So this pipe dream of everybody having this no income or low income tax state, it's never going to happen. It's just never ever going to happen. You look, Bobby Jindal pulled his plan back. The governor of Minnesota pulled his plan back. All these folks realize it's a pipe dream. And Scott and I were sitting there with the lobbyist for Chase Bank. He just got out of a meeting with Jamie Dimon. And Jamie Dimon, they were talking about income taxes in the state. And Jamie Dimon didn't even know that Florida didn't have an income tax. So all these people who think that these folks are going to flock to our state because we don't have an income tax, they don't care. The state income tax, 20% cut got you at the highest rate, I think, $8,000.
Yeah.
If you're that wealthy and you're at the highest rate, you need a better accountant because you should not be paying that rate. So the state income tax really doesn't have that big of an impact. It's just kind of like the fad that we're in right now.
I think you're right. He is no.
He was much clearer there. No microphone, anything. He dropped out of character there.
I mean, not only CPAs and realtors, what about the manufacturing industry? I mean, eventually they're going to hit them too.
The manufacturers immediately, second only to the dispatch who endorses everything Kasich does without reading it, immediately came out and endorsed this plan. 2 days later, they realized trademarks, patents, no exemption for business-to-business services, walked it right back.
And the other half of my question is, have they even considered the number of companies, businesses, individuals that are going to leave, go over that border? We're only an hour away.
They absolutely did not consider. There's no way they considered any of this. This is what the General Assembly heard in testimony.
NCR,
Again, I can't. The witnesses, the opponents who have come in have ranged from midway operators for your county fairs who said that this will kill them because it'll be on the wristbands, the bracelets, ride tickets, the knocking over the milk jugs, to some guy who made nuclear parts for NASA, had a $60 million business in Mansfield, never heard of the place. And they asked him about the income tax. He goes, that doesn't matter. You start doing this sales tax, he goes, I'm gone. It's not even, the ink won't be drying. I am gone.
Be cheaper to pull out?
Mm-hmm. That was exactly, so the House has got that. The governor, I think, is slowly getting it, but frankly, he's burnt so many bridges in this process.
I may be picky, but just look at the House. I keep hearing the rate 0.63%.
Yes.
I think it's more like 6.3%. It's not 0.6%.
You're right.
6.3%.
And that's when you do all 88 and the 8 transits, that's the average. Like I said, they'll go in and cap those rates. So, it may be more here in Montgomery. I don't know what your rate, what is Montgomery County's rate? Well, you're going to end up probably higher than that. Cincinnati's got the stadiums, Cuyahoga's got the stadium. They'll end up higher. Some places will end up lower. When you do the whole 96 table, that's what it averages out to.
My only point was
you're right.
6.3.
I started out in engineering, and there was a lot of math. That's why poli-sci and public administration. So, you're right.
Could you please fill us in here on what the CAT tax is, please?
The CAT tax is Ohio's attempt at a gross receipts tax. It's called a commercial activity tax. And if you're a manufacturer, you take your entire gross receipts for the year and you are taxed at, and I want to get this decimal, Paul, 0.024. It's a very low. Is it 0.0 or 0.00? It's a significantly low rate, and it is that tax on your gross receipts, not taking profit or income that way. There is a $1 million exemption. If you don't have $1 million in gross receipts, you don't file, and that's where you file a minimum 150. You file the minimum of 150 tax, but that's where your rate doesn't apply, and that's so for most small businesses, small accountants, and the like, it doesn't hit. I'm getting the. We'll stick around. I'll answer questions all day, but I'm getting to get off the stage. The gong is going to ring. So thank you for having us.
In the interest of time, we're just making a bit of a stop in their presentation. If we have time at the end, and I'm sure that they would be happy to stay and answer questions, we can do that then, but I know some of you need to leave by 10, so I just wanted to move it along a little bit. But it's so fascinating. Thank you both for a great presentation. Now, at this time, we're going to take a look at matters that affect real estate all the way across the country. The National Association of Realtors lobbies in Washington, D.C. on many important realtor issues. And one of the busiest NAR leaders undertaking that task is Steve Brown, our own Steve Brown, broker and owner of Iron Gate Realtors. As many of you know, this year Steve is the NAR president-elect, and next year he will step into the role of national president. We're glad he could fit this into his busy schedule, so please welcome Steve Brown.
Thank you, everyone. I don't know if you're fired up, but after hearing that presentation, do you wonder why have a realtor organization? Is there any doubt why we are realtors and why we're a part of this association? If we did not have this association, who would defend us? Who would represent us in Columbus? Who would it be? Who represents the property owners in our country? Who? Who speaks for the 75 million property owners in the United States? It's the realtors who speak for them. And yes, we have a lot of free riders in our industry. We have approximately 3 million licensees in the country. 1 million of those licensees are realtors. But those 1 million realtors do 80 to 90% of the business in our country. So I hope that this has fired you up. Sometimes I in this position, I do a lot of exotic traveling. Like I just got back from Bentonville, Arkansas, and next week I'm headed to Omaha, Nebraska. And I sometimes wonder, why am I doing this? Why am I here in Arkansas? I'd much rather be in beautiful Dayton, Ohio, and I really mean that. We have a beautiful city, and I am more proud of my city as I travel throughout the country. I will tell you that. Yeah, absolutely. And wherever I go, I'm not introduced as Steve Brown from Centerville. I'm introduced as Steve Brown from Dayton, Ohio. And it's very important that we realize what we have in this wonderful community. But after that, Paul and lobbyists, what are their roles? What do they do really for us? They're educators. They educate our elected officials. That's their main job, to tell them what these policies and programs and tax proposals really mean to their constituents. So they're educating not only our elected officials, but today they really opened our eyes. So let me start with some few facts that I want to share just on a national basis. Homeownership and investment in real estate accounts for 15% of the U.S. gross domestic product. That's $2 trillion. $2 trillion. Outside of healthcare, real estate is the largest contributor to the U.S. economy. The real estate industry in Ohio accounted for $63.6 million, or 13.5% of Ohio's state product in 2011. The median home price in Ohio today is $107,100. Total income injected into our state when a home is sold is $39,400. If you think that we don't have an impact on our economy, listen to these numbers. Every home that's sold, nearly $40,000 is injected into our economy. When a home is sold in Ohio, $9,600 of income is generated into real estate-related industries. $5,600 is spent on consumer items such as furniture and appliances and landscaping. $2,300 is spent on remodeling, normally within 2 years of the purchase. But homeownership is not just about overall economic benefit. It is also about personal benefit, personal wealth building. In spite of the recession, in spite of this horrible recession that we are coming out of, homeowners have a 30 times more net worth than renters do. So never let anyone tell you that homeownership is not a good investment for the consumer. All of this is why we continue to advocate for public policies that continue to give access to home ownership. That public policy would make home ownership both affordable and sustainable. So in going forward, fortunately, we are moving out of a terrible recession. We are on track to increase home sales this year by 7%, finishing slightly under 5 million units sold in 2013. NAR predicts another 6% increase in 2014, nearly 5.4 million home sales in 2014. Nationally, prices are expected to continue to rise 6.9% in 2013 and another 4.3% in 14. As you know, Dayton and across Ohio, we've experienced a good sales price increases. Now, I know those numbers are skewed because of some of our higher priced properties are selling, but nevertheless, we have an upward trend. That good news, though, is tempered in Ohio by our foreclosure rate. It's more than the national average. Our foreclosure rate in Ohio is about 4.3% compared to a national average of 4%. But to keep the market moving forward, any disruption, such as these proposals, that who does that ultimately cost? Yes, it costs us as brokers, as sales agents, and so forth. But it costs the consumer. It costs our property owners when they sell a property or buy a property. This is why we are vigilant in trying to keep policies in place that would build our industry and not tear it down in any way. As you know, there are some national proposals right now that could significantly affect us. FHA. It went way beyond its calling in the last 5 years and underwrote about 70% of our mortgage financing in the marketplace. They were never ever envisioned to do that. Because of that, their solvency now is in question, even though financially they are still stable. But in order to address their solvency, what are they doing? They're proposing that the minimum down payment move from 3.5% to 5%. Currently, that would cut the affordability and therefore the sales of about 300,000 home sales in the coming year. That absolutely wipes out any gain that we would make in more sales in the year. We cannot let that happen, and I will tell you, NAR is standing and representing all of us in these meetings with FHA that, yes, we understand that we have to protect our taxpayers, we have to protect our government, but we cannot forsake and let go of the original mission that FHA was set out. Tax reform. Well, tax reform is not just going on in the state of Ohio. It's obviously going on a national level. We are in the very early stages. The House Ways and Means Committee now has appointed committees to study different tax proposals. I want to tell you, realtors are at that table. They are a part, Ed, you brought that up earlier, they are a part of the proactive solutions that we can bring to our government. They're at that table. Secondly, the Senate Finance Committee is starting discussions as well. We will be at that table as well, explaining the impact of these tax decisions, what they have on our consumer, what they have on that great American dream of that property home ownership. So we will be at that table. Never underestimate the impact of the mortgage interest deduction. In 2011, Ohio had over 3 million owner-occupied homes. 67% of those homes had mortgages. 1.4 million Ohioans claimed the mortgage interest deduction in 2011. That translates savings, affordability, sustainability in their home of nearly $1,900. $1,900 we were able to help people stay in their homes, to make them affordable, to help them sustain their home ownership. And bear in mind, when we talk about home ownership, yes, we want to increase it, but we are very well aware, you all are well aware, you want to sell someone a home that they can sustain. their ownership, that they don't go into default. I know many of us were worried about some of these loans that were being given. Many of us, I did too, took advantage of some of those loans. But we've learned that lesson. But these tax proposals that are in place right now, that are floating in and around the market, are very dangerous to the sustainability of homeownership in our country. For every, I want to tell you, so we switch over to RPAC. Our legislative agenda on the national level is focused very much on the grassroots. That's what RPAC really is all about. The grassroots-based RPAC that will back congressional federal candidates who have strong records of supporting home ownership and private property. For every dollar, and Paul mentioned this, for every dollar that RPAC raised, 70 cents goes back to the state where it was raised. And as Paul mentioned, if we want to use it for the dog catcher, that's just fine. But let me tell you, and I've gotten into trouble, so I'm going to use two examples on this. One, someone mentioned Nancy Pelosi earlier, and everyone chuckles about that. Nancy Pelosi ran for the city council in San Francisco. Guess who her major backers were? Realtors. So she served on the council. Then where did she go? To the State House. Then where did she go? She went to Congress. She was third in line to the president, and she was our real estate friend. Now, switch gears. John Boehner. Same scenario. What did John do? Started on the local level, moved to the state, moved to Congress. John Boehner stands third in line to the president to this day, and he's our friend. Not in every he doesn't agree with us on every point, but he is our friend, and he will always listen to our opinions. That's the power of RPAC, and that's the power of getting involved with these candidates early on in their careers. RPAC raised $7.2 million in 2012. That was a 17% increase over 2011. Some people have said, well, I've heard RPAC has gone down. Actually, it went up. Members participating in RPAC, realtor members participating in RPAC, went from 27% in 11 to 30% in 2012. There are over 4,700 major investors. That's up 35% over 2011. A major investor is someone who gives $1,000 or more. RPAC dispersed $4.6 million in direct contributions to federal candidates, leadership PACs, and national political parties, making RPAC the largest contributor to candidates across the country. And the success rate, 84% of all RPAC-supported candidates won their Senate race. So I'm going to tell you, we supported Sherrod Brown. And for 1 minute, I'm not going to apologize to anyone about that, because we stand as the Realtor Party. We do not stand here before you as a Republican or a Democrat. We will always take the position to support those incumbents who have been in our corner and represented us. I understand some of these candidates have other positions on other issues that are not attractive to us, not attractive to me. But that's not the goal of the PAC. The PAC is to put people in place that understand our issues and support them. Now, the advantage of supporting Sherrod Brown, the committee chair for this Finance and Senate Banking Committee is retiring. Guess who's in line for the chairmanship of one of the most powerful committees in the Senate? Sherrod Brown. If we have him in that position, that's the committee that will decide tax issues that will directly affect us, directly affect our pockets. So I don't want people to think that we're a partisan PAC. In fact, the reason why we are so strong in Washington is because we are viewed completely nonpartisan, to the dislike of all the parties. They want us to be a partisan PAC. They really do want that, but we refuse and always have. But this, some great numbers here. Most of our funds are split between the Republicans and the Democrats. Let me tell you, 54% of our monies last year went to Republican candidates. 54%. Another 46% went to the Democratic candidates. This decision was not made on party lines. This decision was made on who supported our issues. That's how we do it. That's what RPAC is all about. And again, the success rate. 94% of all RPAC-supported candidates won their House races. RPAC was 100% successful in every Ohio congressional race. We supported Realtor champion Mike Turner here in Dayton. Darlene Breen is his FPC, his federal political coordinator in our Dayton area. Mike co-chairs the real estate caucus in the House. And he is our friend. He understands our issues. That's what RPAC is all about. That's all of what it's about. I'm going to close here by saying this. A past Ohio president came up with a slogan, and it's truer today than it was when he said it 15 years ago. And that is, if real estate is our profession, politics is our business. If we were not involved, if we didn't have Paul and Scott sitting out here, who would represent us? Yeah, Iron Gate could call up our representative and say, hey, we really don't like that very much. What kind of presence? But when they go before these folks, our elected officials, they go before representing 26,000 voters. 26,000 voters. That's the strength of our organization. That's the strength of RPAC. And that's why certainly I have become involved in this, because it's important to our business, and I think ultimately, without any question, it's important to our country to see that homeownership is increased and sustained in our country because of all the benefits that it provides to our societies and our neighborhoods. Good schools, lower crime, higher voter participation, more civic involvement. That all comes with home ownership. That's why we're here. That's why you all, I know, are here. And I thank you. So, Nancy.
Thank you, Steve. That was great. Before we wrap this up, I have a really special surprise for all of you in this room. We're going to be introducing our new CEO and EO, Gavin Blair. Gavin, would you like to come up and just say a word or two?
Thanks, Nancy. I'm looking forward to getting to meet everybody here in Dayton. I'm excited. It was a fun process to go through. I want to thank Georgiana and I for heading up that search committee to narrow it down to where it is today. I'm excited, looking forward to it. If I can stress one more thing on RPAC, something Paul and Scott didn't mention, but 97 out of the 99 House members were supported by RPAC. So that's part of the reason why we have a seat at the table, why one of the groups that was selected to come in front of them and meet with the finance chairman was the Realtor organization. So that just stresses once again what we do at the local level, electing those people. We've got their ear and they're listening to us. So I'm looking forward to meeting everybody. Please come up and say hello after the meeting. I look forward to meeting you. Thank you, Nancy.
Well, we're really very excited to have Gavin on board. He's going to be starting on June 10th and working closely with Jess, who'll pass on all of his valuable years of information in just a few weeks to Gavin. So, as if that can be done. Now, let's all give our speakers another round of applause for sharing this great information this morning. None of their efforts would be possible without your support, the Realtors. Through your investment in RPAC, we're able to fight legislation like the governor's proposed tax increase, keeping the National Flood Insurance Program going, and keeping the banks out of real estate. But it does take the commitment of each and every one of you. At this time, I'd like to welcome Joe Willen to the podium. Joe? Joe is our Dayton Board Chair of the RPAC Committee.
Thanks, Nancy, and thanks to our speakers, too. She's right, it does take a commitment from each and every one of us, and what you're going to see in front of you on the tables is a pledge card. And if you could take a moment and fill it out and invest in the future of your business, all of our businesses, and in the future of home ownership in the state of Ohio, you can bring those pledge cards up to me. You can leave it on the tables. The staff will collect them, and we'll take care of that. It'll be very much appreciated. One other thing I want to do is there's a few in the audience. Steve mentioned the major investors, $1,000 per year. We have several in the room who were major investors last year. I would like for those people to please stand. Give these folks a round of applause. They really deserve it. They've done so much for our organization. We're extremely grateful for everything they do. At this point, basically, I want to thank you for your investment in our PAC and in your business, your attention to this program, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event. Everybody have a great day.